Hey everybody, how's it going again? It's Carpo here, and this video, perhaps a subject that I've driven into the ground several times talking about, but continual new information comes up, which I just feel like I have to speak out about. It almost seems pointless to talk about the pharmaceutical industry, the giant it is, the behemoth it's become, and how it answers to nothing and no one. And I've heard people even say things like, well, why don't people start filing lawsuits against these companies? And I hate to tell you, but they do. All the time. Every single day. Thousands and thousands of lawsuits against the pharmaceutical industry. But the pharmaceutical industry has money set aside, billions of dollars, to cover lawsuits. And this is one of the biggest concerns. Many of the people who have adverse reactions to drugs or have issues with, or lawsuits with these companies, they are paid to shut up, basically. Their settlements don't allow them to talk about things. It's paying for silence. And so I just wanted to go over the reason, first off, why I'm making this video. This article this morning that I read, it was the first time that any drug executives have been punished for the opioid crisis. Now let me tell you, with all the drug dealers that have been taken off the streets over the years and the concern that the DEA claims to have about the drug problem and the opioid crisis in this country, the fact that no white-collar executives have done any jail time, to me is a travesty, but it's exactly what you would expect. People with money don't do jail time. So I'm just going to read you this little article so you can see where I'm coming from. Federal prosecutors charged drug distributor Rochester Drug Cooperative and its former CEO with drug trafficking charges Tuesday. Okay, so this was, I believe this was just the other day. Yeah, April 23rd here. The first criminal charges for a pharmaceutical company and executives in the nation's ongoing opioid crisis. Then it goes on and it says, for the first time, a pharmaceutical company and white-collar executives were charged like street dealers and traffickers. And I thought, you know, that's a pretty good deal. Let's see where it goes. Well, as they go on to say, the prosecution is the first of its kind. Our office will do everything in its power to combat this epidemic, from street-level dealers to the executives who illegally distribute drugs from their boardrooms, Attorney General said. So, it goes on to, it says, RDC was also charged with failing to properly report thousands of suspicious orders of oxycodone, fentanyl, and other controlled substances to the DEA, officials said. The DEA has been investigating for years whether the RDC failed to comply with pharmaceutical reporting laws. Then it says, according to court records, from 2012 to 2016, RDC filed more than 1.5 million orders for controlled substances from its pharmacy customers, but reported just 4 suspicious orders to the DEA. In reality, there were at least 2,000 suspicious orders. So this is where it gets pretty sad. And then there's these quotes, he says, today's charges should send shockwaves throughout the pharmaceutical industry, reminding them of their role as gatekeepers of prescription medication. On and on and on and on and on. So this is where it gets sad. The company agreed to a non-prosecution consent because the original charge they were facing years in prison. They agreed to a non-prosecution consent decree and agreed to pay a $20 million penalty. They made over $1 billion in profits. A $20 million penalty is nothing. And like I said, this is the same they would just pay out to a couple of lawsuits. And not only that, but it says it will be monitored by the government for the next 5 years. I mean, and then he goes on to say, yes, we made mistakes. Oh, but, you know, we've learned from our mistakes. Complete bullshit. They knew exactly what they were doing. If executives aren't going to get jail time, no one's ever going to have any fears, because money is easy enough to come by for these people. This is the reason why it's so frustrating, even to the generic makers. This is a different article. The FDA has received approximately 150 letters sent by companies complaining about access to the doses they need. About half of those involve branded drug makers claiming that the risk evaluation and mitigation strategies, an FDA-required process designed to promote drug safety, prohibits them from providing doses. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this in a nutshell. In order for a generic manufacturer, after a patent's up on a drug, to put out a generic formulation, they have to have at least 5,000 doses. In order to get that 5,000 doses, there's only one place to usually get it, and that's to have somebody make it or to get it from the previous company. The companies will not sell to the generic manufacturers. When a generic company finally is able to put their product on the shelf for cheaper, the pharmaceutical companies will talk to the pharmacies and the drugstores and say, pay them, which is called they call it what is it, a pay for delay, pay to delay. And it's, these are terms that are well known in the pharmaceutical industry. I came across an article this morning while I was doing research, while I was looking for info on pharma. And the interesting thing is, when you're looking for really deep, detailed information about pharmaceutical industry, you come across pharmaceutical boards and pages and websites where it's pharma people talking back and forth. Every single one of those is about profits. I've never seen one of them talk about health. It's about how to get more doctors to prescribe more drugs, and yay, golf clap, you're making your money. This is great, but we're living at a time where many of these drugs which are being sold were invented by individuals decades ago. And there's no reason that a drug like insulin, which has been around for a long time, should all of a sudden a couple of years ago double in price. And that's exactly what happened. Same with the EpiPens. And once again, they're preventing generic makers from getting their product on the market. Insulin is a life-saving medication. There was a story my wife told me about a guy who went to get some insulin from his doctor, and his doctor was gone for the weekend, and nobody else would give it to him. He wasn't allowed to get it. Insurance wouldn't cover it, and he died. And it's just ridiculous that things like this should happen to American citizens, to any citizen. So let's talk about new drugs. And, because a lot of people would say, well, it costs a lot to patent a new drug. There are approximately 27 new drugs approved each year. It costs, on average, $2.6 billion to promote one drug. Now, to go through research and development, cost, and testing, and all of this. And this would be for a new drug, right? This follows what they call Eroom's law, which, if you know computers, it's the opposite of Moore's law. Moore's law is where computer and processing power doubles about every 18 months. Well, Eroom's law is basically where the company is losing a certain percentage every so often, and the research and development cost has to pay off. What they realized in recent decades was that there is no more money to be made in antibiotics. This is why nobody's working on them. There's no profits to be made. It's not that we don't have amazing new treatments. There are several different types of therapies, but nobody's working on them because there's no profits to be made. And most of the companies are working on what they call personalized drugs. And these are drugs that are very specific for a very small amount of people to target very specific conditions. These drugs cost, on average, $83,000 per person per year. For any one of these drugs, if you took all of these personalized drugs and averaged them out. Even the CBD, Epidiolex, which was approved recently, I think, in 2018. The first CBD product from GW Pharmaceuticals, I think, in the UK. I think it's $32,000 per year for something that grows wild. But they found a way to patent it. So, in the last 20 years, we've created several different illnesses. The idea that Paxil was being popped like candy and promoted as this wonderful new way to enjoy your life to its full potential. People are trying to escape reality. Reality is a complicated endeavor. We are not meant to just float around our entire lives on some antidepressant. Some people may truly need antidepressants. But the idea of a mood or chemical imbalance, these were ideas that were put into our heads. They created this placebo effect. And so it's pretty sad. I don't want to go too much more into it here. I just wanted to complain about the fact that somebody was finally charged and then they just pay a $20 million fine and they're back doing what they were doing before. Executives never do jail time. The only person who's ever done jail time was Martin Shkreli. And a few years back, he got charged with taking a drug, buying it, and raising the price of a life-saving medication by 5,000%. And I'm sure many of you heard of this story. He never got time for that either, of course. That's free market. But he did later get charged for fraud on a totally separate incident, and now he got 7 years, I guess, in prison. He's not going to get charged for screwing over people who are suffering and dying. It's only going to be when there's some defrauding some other company. You don't get charged for screwing over the public. You get charged for screwing over other companies. And that's how that system works. It's pretty disgusting. for those of you who are aware of what happened like during the time of MK Ultra, where there were these soldiers coming back and they were having empathy for the enemy, you know, after World War II, saying that they feel bad for the other side. These nutcase, this paranoia about communism, they started thinking that the soldiers had been brainwashed over there by Russians or by Germans, by some compound or chemical. So the U.S. government started working on their own brainwashing procedure and techniques. It was MK Ultra. It wasn't just in the U.S., it was also in Canada. Both governments worked together. They introduced many antipsychotics, LSD, various psychedelics into psych wards where people had no voice, no way to speak out, no way to do anything about it. These types of dark, you know, dank, rat-infested, you know, psych wards that you see in the movies, those were real places, and in some places they still are. But not only were these people, you know, many of these people not mentally ill, they were also being used as guinea pigs for drugs that nobody even knew how they worked. And it was all for the good of humanity, right? You know, guinea pigs, lab rats. And the reason I bring that up is because we think that we're past that now. We think, oh, well, we treat people with mental health issues with respect, and we treat our elderly with respect, and that's complete bullshit too. We treat our elderly like crap. But the thing is, instead of the guinea pigs in the psych wards, you are the guinea pigs. All the people who are taking 4 or 5 different antipsychotics or antidepressants, all the people out there that think you need an anxiolytic, or the people like myself who thought, I need Valium, or I need something to keep me calmed down, some pharmaceutical. There's got to be an answer to my confusion. Life is so hard. Life is difficult. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Can't I just think clearly for a little while? Can't I just get my shit together? Maybe if I just take this for a little bit, I'll be okay. I took buspirone for a little bit, made my head feel weird, and got these weird brain twitches, brain zaps. I took Valium, and I still take it sparingly, and it's useful because it does motivate me. But if you take it for more than a few days, you just become a zombie. I enjoyed it so much one time I ordered phenazepam, which was a super high potency, you know, benzodiazepine off of the internet from China somewhere, and I was taking this stuff in like, you know, like 1 to 2 milligram doses, to where if you take too much, you end up waking up in a puddle somewhere. And I read so many stories of people doing that, waking up in a psych ward, waking up in a hospital, waking up in prison. And I just dumped it down the toilet. It's like, I can't live on these. The pharmaceuticals are potent, and they will market them for anything, you know. But the thing is, the reason why I was taking that was because I wanted to self-diagnose myself because I was stressed. Not realizing that everybody's stressed, everybody's anxious, everybody's depressed sometime. These are our motivators that keep us going. There's an entire generation who thinks we need to mask those feelings of stress, that we need to appear happy all the time, that we need to go through life with the glass half full. And that's just bullshit. It doesn't work that way. You're going to have bad days. You're going to say fuck sometimes when you hit your thumb with a hammer. You know, everything doesn't have to be perfect. But pharmaceuticals are so tempting. And these are just the ones for mental health. And that's the point. That's a whole aspect of the drug and from the manufacturers that I say, if a person's willing to get suckered into buying something for a disease they don't have, so be it. But when it comes to a disease that you can see, where you're dying, where your organs are failing, where your body can't take care of itself or regulate itself properly, and there's a life-saving medication that was invented 50 years ago that companies are throwing around like a game, that you end up having to pay $1,000 a dose for, and you can't afford it, and you're counting out your food stamps, seeing what you can sacrifice, you know, for your medication. The only people that care about that are the people who are actually going through that and suffering. The people who write the bills, the people who, you know, who put these products out. Do you think any one of these people have ever really suffered and not had access to the medicine they need? You know, the one thing that disgusts me is that I think every American should have the same health care that Congress has. Our government officials have wonderful health care for life. Do we, the citizens? No. But wait a minute, aren't they working for us? Well, it's just another extra deal for, you know, being in bed with the pharma. And it's not about a conspiracy. It's about money. It's plain and simple. Money talks. And these people have a lot of money and a lot of power. So this video ended up being a little longer than I intended it to be. But it could probably be a lot longer. I am still getting ready to read this book that I'm writing, and I'm going to do it out loud and record it, and then I will put it up on the channel when it's done. But I keep saying that, and I'm still debating. It's just such a long read, and it's going to take me an hour or two to get through it. I want to make sure it's done right. And the reason I haven't is because every week some new bullshit article comes up that just exposes just how corrupt it really is. So my main frustration, greed is greed. If you want to charge a lot for a new drug that you invented, for some disease that maybe doesn't even exist, so be it. But when you're charging more than people can afford and doubling the price of something like insulin, a life-saving medication that nobody had to spend any research and development, there's no cost to recoup. The reason these prices double, the reason drugs become so much more expensive, is because these companies are trying to recoup costs on and losses on drugs that failed, ones that they don't, that don't do them any good. Sorry, it's not my fault that your new drug failed or didn't work out the way you'd hoped, but that doesn't mean that a life-saving medication that our ancestors, grandparents, their grandparents invented, those should be readily available. And I do have a few answers to this, a 5-year protection on patents, and then allow generics to manufacture. No more of this pay-to-delay crap with orders. No lobbying money allowed, but it doesn't matter. No matter how many laws you pass, there will be somebody to slide a $100 bill under somebody's door, right? So just by being aware, all of us can decide if we want to take these pharmaceuticals or not. That's a completely separate issue if you're talking about mental health compared to living or dying. And I think life-saving medications should be on a level all their own. And you should know that of all the medicines that are on the market, the top 10 price-wise are cancer medications, which can cost $10,000 to $30,000 or more, like per dose. It's ridiculous. And you've got to ask yourself, even with all the studies that have been done, everybody working on cancer, can you really say that those drugs just happen to cost the most? Well, you got to bleed the people out before they die, right? And it's sad. People are just looked at like numbers, and it's depressing. So stand up for yourself. Speak up. I'm speaking up for the people that can't, the people that were paid to keep silent, the people who were affected and harmed by these drugs. Not just people who willingly took them or went to their doctor, but the military, the soldiers who were shot up with a whole plethora of vaccines and different trials and testing drugs, and who knows what other cocktails soldiers have had to put in their body. I mean, they signed away their rights, basically, so they've always been the guinea pigs. So when we realize that, we should be angry about it. And as to what to do about it, I don't know. Be well. Thanks for watching. Hope you all have a wonderful day. And leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Talk to you soon.
Medical researchers have discovered a disease which has no symptoms. It is impossible to detect, and there is no known cure.
Carpus channel. Yeah.